what it means to be a Christian. Like, what can we compare it to? See, a lot of people in the world who aren't Christians look at us and they see a bumper sticker. They see us as kind of tacky, with a simple message, more or less annoying, no depth to us whatsoever. Now, you might be coming here and saying, well, I'm not a bumper sticker. And maybe secretly, though, what you're hoping that following Jesus is more like an anglerfish. You see, the male anglerfish goes and finds a female, and he attaches himself to her body and basically becomes a parasitic flap. He does nothing whatsoever. He just sits there, feeds off her blood supply for the rest of his life. And judging by behavior, some people are hoping this is what following Jesus looks like, right? I'm just going to go there, and Jesus, you provide everything I need, and I'm just going to kind of flap here in the water while you carry me around. Jesus, though, is the one who defines who we are. Here last week we talked about how he has declared us blessed in unusual circumstances. Now he tells us what we are. In the next section, he will describe what he came to do. All of this comes before his teachings on moral topics like murder and giving to the poor. All through the Bible, there's kind of this pattern of God starting with, this is who I am, this is what I promised to you, this is who you are, and then moving to, this is what you do in light of that. Open your Bibles with me, or your apps if you have them on your phone, to Matthew chapter 5. We'll start at verse 13. This is right after the Beatitudes. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Jesus gives us three images of who we are in him that should guide our behavior. So let's look at the first one. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Now, we don't typically today think of salt as a really valuable commodity. I mean, when you run out, you're like, oh no, how are you going to afford more salt? You just go and it's like $1 and you buy it. But in the ancient world, salt was very expensive. In fact, some Roman soldiers got paid in salt. Like imagine, you go to get your check from your boss. He's like, actually, here's a bag of salt. But that's just how valuable it was. And one of the reasons it was valuable is because this is how they bought their meat. Have any of you, by the way, ever been to an open-air meat market? I would have a difficult time trusting it, just totally honest. Mid-June day, we're coming around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That thing's been sitting out there the whole day. You got like flies, of course, attracted to it. And so salt gave them the ability to preserve meat far longer than they would be able to without it. Not only that, when it's been out in the sun for a while and it's starting to taste a little off, adding salt to it made it edible when you otherwise wouldn't be able to handle the taste. And just cooking in general, salt enhances the flavor. And they just like the taste of salt. As some of you guys go a little overboard with the salt. So as a side note, like I put salt on my eggs. Sarah aims for like Lot's wife level of saltiness. So you guys know what I'm talking about. Now, salt, though, could also be low quality. When they harvested it, it could be mixed in with other minerals that would look like salt and dissolve in water like salt, but would have no flavor whatsoever. And so, the point Jesus makes is, if you have salt that is missing, and the one thing that makes it great, its flavor, what good is it? If you're going to be salt without flavor, you might as well be a chain link fork. Totally useless. Imagine trying to use one of those. If you're going to be salt without flavor, you might as well be open-toed rain boots. Or an inflatable paddle. You get the picture. And then he says, how could its saltiness be restored to it? If you're missing the one thing that makes you salt, what can you add to it to make it salty again? More salt? It's like if you have gasoline that won't burn, what are you going to do with it? It's useless for anything except getting thrown out. And so I think we can all say we do not want this to be Jesus' description of me. So what is it that makes us distinct? What is it that makes us salty? What does that mean? So you look at the context here. Jesus is describing at the beginning of his sermon everything that follows. So he's going to go into covering teaching that touches on like every aspect of our life, really challenging, radically different from the world around us. And when we live this out, we're salty. But if you claim his name, if you wear that label of Christian and nothing changes in your life, you are salt without the flavor. Now remember, it is only the work of God that changes us from the inside out and gives us a new nature and a new flavor. Now the problem in America, though, is that if you go around and ask people, they would absolutely describe the church as salt without flavor. We've lost our separation from the world around us, where people look at Christians and they can't tell the difference looking at our lives between those who claim to follow Jesus and those who don't. Part of the reason is that we have cultural Christians populating our churches. And especially in a small town like this, right? We're in the Bible Belt. If you just go around town and ask people, they will assume the default is, I grew up in Thayer, therefore I am a Christian. That's like what everybody is. If you want social standing here, there is still a favorable image of those who are in church. And so you have people whose hearts have not been changed, who wear the same label as other people who are following Jesus. And what that does is it dilutes the distinctiveness in the church. Now, we're in the middle of kind of this turning point as a country where that same person with an unchanged heart is no longer wearing the label Christian, but he's just stepping over the other side of the line and saying, now I don't follow any religion whatsoever. And so for some people panic and they say, oh man, church numbers in America are declining. And socially, like, we're not as accepted, as we used to be. I look at that and I say there may be a good element to this in restoring the flavor of those who follow Jesus, where it's not just, the cultural thing to do on a Sunday morning. But when somebody says, I'm a Jesus follower, it will mean something more. And it's as though, think of it this way, if every other part of our world is heart-healthy, low sodium, we get to be the McDonald's fries in the world. Like people encountering Christians, Jesus followers, should be like, oh man, I have been missing out. This is very different than everything else out there. Jesus goes on. Yeah, we're not don't cause heart attacks with people, just the salt. Jesus goes on though, he gives us a second image of who we are in him. It says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. One of my favorite memories with Sarah, we were in the darkness of a remote village in El Salvador, and we kind of laid back on this hillside, and you could see all kinds of stars. See, where we grew up in Virginia, there's a massive shopping center that at any time in the night, there would just be this artificial horizon, the glow, in the middle of the night, and so you couldn't see as many stars. And we were just able to watch out there, and we could see like meteorite showers and just more stars than you can count, because there just wasn't a whole lot of background light. And as we laid out there, and we were on the top of this hillside, you could look out and see the dots of other homes and clusters of homes in the darkness of the night. A city on a hill in the ancient world is seen whether you want it to or not. It is bright, the surrounding countryside is not. The church, Jesus says, cannot be hidden. This is a statement of fact. He's not saying you go be the light. He's saying you are the light that cannot be hidden in a dark place. Now how can Jesus say this as a statement of fact? And the central foundation of this is the fact that this is God's mission, not ours. Saving people who live in darkness is a mission that God planned and started and will bring to completion. Look at the book of Acts. Every time the church grew, it was not the disciples saying, oh, we got to go reach people in modern day Turkey. So we're going to get together, we're going to form a committee, we're going to have a mission plan, and then we're going to go put it into action. That's not what happened. God allowed persecution to scatter the church, and then this is what happened. Now those who were scattered went about preaching the word. God wanted to reach those people, and he brought about the actions that led to it. So when we look at our church right now, this awesome moment that we're in, don't think that we've grown because I'm your pastor. Don't think that people are coming here because we made this decision or that decision or because of this program or anything else. We have grown because God decided in his mercy to bring people in. Here's how the book of Acts again states it as the church grew. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. He will use people and our best efforts, but God is the one who gives the growth. God makes us shine, and then the world cannot help but see the difference. Again, in the book of Acts, the pattern is that God makes the first move. And a lot of times they're sharing the gospel, not because they have to go and make people listen to them. People are coming to them and saying, how did that guy get healed? Why do we see something different in you? We see something in you that demands an explanation. Please give it to us. And then they share the gospel. This is the pattern we see in 1 Peter. Notice the flow of what's happening that he describes. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to knock on your neighbor's door. No. Always being prepared to hand out pamphlets. Not quite. To make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. Now you look at the bigger context, what he's describing is this church is suffering. And he says, go and bless the people who are mistreating you because of your faith. And let me tell you, you do that, people will ask questions. And so he says, when you live it out, when you are salty, when you are shining, then people will come to you asking questions. Your job is to be prepared to give a good answer. I remember my friends had kind of an intervention when I began to follow Jesus. They sat me down. Aaron, what's happened? You're like really different now. We should live lives that demand that kind of response from the people around us. That's what happened when the Romans looked at the early church. But again, the issue is now we tell the world we are a city on the hill, but they see no light. We say we are the salt of the earth, and they say, where is your flavor? As our teenagers would say, it's time to get salty and lit. Except that means something totally different in their lingo. I considered using that for like the sermon title. It's like, I'm getting just a little bit too old to use that. Yeah, I know. It happens to all of us. So again, our mission as the church is to go and be the light and be the salt, and people who live in flavorless lives of darkness will see. If we live out the teachings of Jesus that follow this section of Scripture, and being open about when we fail to do so and relying on God's grace, people will ask us questions. Third reason Jesus says a city on a hill can't be hidden. We can't be hidden because we can't help but shine. This is a chunk of plutonium. It is red hot. It is not hot because anybody did anything to it. They didn't put it in a furnace and then take it out to take this picture. Plutonium puts out thousands of watts of energy 24/7 just because it's plutonium. You don't have to hook anything up to it. You don't have to do any kind of reaction. That's just what plutonium does. In all of the letters of the New Testament, written by the apostles and Paul, there is never a moral command given to the church in general, go out and share your faith. I'll say it again. In all the letters of the New Testament, written to churches, all kinds of different situations, not once is it given as like a moral command to all believers, you go out and share your faith. I found that surprising when I first learned that. You'd expect them to have at least a few words in there, like, hey, be sure to go tell your neighbors. Not that it's optional at all. That's not the takeaway here. You look at the life of Paul. His life was spent planting churches. This is the mission that was given to the church by Jesus after the resurrection. Go make disciples of all nations. That's the theme of the book of Acts. The reason why I don't think that that's given as like a repeated command to the church is we can't help but talk about it. Here's what the prophet Jeremiah says. If I say I will not mention him or speak any more in his name, there is in my heart as it were a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I am weary with holding it in, and I cannot. Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians, woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. What we have in Jesus is so incredible. I can't stop telling random people about it. That's just what happens when people begin to follow Jesus. Sarah and I were sitting on the sofa last night, and she said, oh yeah, I guess UVA won the college basketball thingy. Not because we even know any UVA fans. It's because a bunch of our friends just felt compelled to share in the public sphere, oh, this thing happened. We live in a time when some of us post every minute detail of our life into the public sphere. Some of y'all are taking pictures of your dinner. Here's what I ate. Don't tell me that it's possible to have God step into your life and bring you from darkness into life and somehow keep it a secret. Come on, have you ever been around a 6-year-old that something even remotely exciting has happened to? They can't shut up about it. Every time I have seen God step into somebody's life and change them, they become very, very active in telling other people about it. The thing is, some of us just need to be reminded of what God's done to us. So you don't need to tell a city on a hill, hey, be visible. It just is. Now, I was going to maybe bring in a sample of plutonium and pass it around so you can feel like the warmth in your hands. Decided against it. Typically, we want more of a shielded experience. Jesus goes on, though. He says, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Had some people over for dinner recently. We're in the middle of dinner, and the power goes out. Now, we've got 6 kids in the house, and the power goes out. And so suddenly we're fumbling, we're all turning on our phone flashlights, and I go around like lighting tea lights. And I never really considered how weak the light is from like scented candles until you're trying to light up a table enough to eat by it. And so we're doing everything we can think of, and part of that was elevating it. I wasn't lighting those candles and sticking them under the table. Mitchell would have fun with that. But we put them elevated to try and make the light as visible as possible. The oil lamps during the time of Jesus did not put out much more than candles do today. And so if you were trying to light your house with one of those, you would need to try and give it every advantage. So you put it up on a stand. So God has a mission to reach the people around us. We can't help but live different and speak the truth. What we need to do is get out of the way. I'm curious, any of you car fanatics know what's going on with these headlights? This is an antique VW. I'll give you a hint, it's from England. And you see the headlight, it's got a slit cut in. Now typically, headlights are clear as possible. This is a car during World War II when England was being bombed. Somebody had the correct answer. We'll give you a toaster oven after service. And so what happened is the Germans were flying repeated air raids and trying to find cities. And so in the English countryside, they told people, you need to cover all your lights. And they had this set of rules about, headlights on cars and bikes, when you could turn the lights on at your house, because they didn't want to get noticed by the bombers flying overhead. Some people, if we're honest, we shield our faith in the same way. We'll leave a slit there for church times. But be honest, have you ever tried to make it less noticeable praying over your food in public? Right? You're out at a restaurant or you're eating dinner with someone. I've done this. I'm eating and I don't know where they are with the Lord, and so I kind of, just, like I might be thinking about something or checking my phone. And sometimes we hide, not like we're going to lie about being a Christ follower, but we're just not trying to put it out there. We've all had negative experiences. You go and somebody asks you a question about your faith, you have a conversation with somebody, and sometimes they react negatively. Sometimes they really get offended by just the idea of somebody following Jesus. Remember that the disciples who Jesus is talking to, they don't stop when it gets difficult for them, which involves very terrible things like getting filled with arrows or boiled alive. And I'll be honest, as I've considered, these passages and just thinking over them this week, God has brought to light a number of times in my life that I've failed to live this out. And I'll even say, for me, evangelism, and I'll go and have conversations with random people. If you get on an airplane and you sit next to me, we're going to have a talk about Jesus. That's just how it's going to be. But even for me, being, outgoing in that sense and gifted in evangelism, I guarantee you I don't live up to what Jesus is talking about. There have been times where I did not listen to God's leading in a relationship with somebody that I had. There have been times that I've kept silent because I was more comfortable that way. And so remember, as we go through this entire series of messages, we're going to find times that we don't measure up to what Jesus is describing. So remember, church, we need grace. So I'm not preaching this as some people do with evangelism, like you are literally a terrible person and you need to feel guilty if you're not out there doing this, this, and this to reach your neighbors. Our motivation as Christians is not the guilt of our failures. It is the forgiveness that God offers us. That joy is a much better motive. So we fall short in this. The gospel is good news because Jesus did. He did live this out. His life was so distinct that even our calendars are broken in half by the event of his life, BC and AD. When Jesus showed up in Capernaum, Matthew tells us earlier in chapter 4, it fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. The people dwelling in darkness have seen a great light. For those dwelling in the region in the shadow of death, on them a light has dawned. Jesus brought me from the darkness into the light, and so now all I want to do is point others to the same. So every week as we go forward here, I'm going to give you a practical challenge. Easter is in 2 weeks. I want each of you to think of somebody that you know that is not already connected to a church and growing in their faith. Somebody that you know. God has already done the setup. He's already done the setup because you have connections to people I don't have. It's not just you go and give him a business card and say, well, you need to talk to Pastor Aaron. He'll tell you about Jesus. That's not what God set you up for. You've been around somebody and they've observed your life. So I want to challenge you, invite them into your home. Invite them to church. Tell them about the light. See, Jesus didn't just come to point us to something else that would save. He himself is the way, the truth, and the life. And the promise is that as we do this, the world will take notice. Whenever we are distressed by darkness around us, we say, I don't think it can get any more pitch black than it is in the culture around us. We are reminded that we are to be that city on the hill that can't be hidden. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your promises to us. That you have made us different. We aren't filled with flavor and light on our own, but because you reached into our hearts and you've made us new people. And that even as we are challenged and sometimes we feel like failures because we realize that we've been way, way too silent, too comfortable, we are reminded of your grace and the perfect example that you set. So God, I pray that this church would step forward in confidence, bear your name on our lips and in our lives. In Jesus' name.